Who we starting with? Are we going with the same direction?
Sitting with me, y'all. Okay, so I try to make these questions where y'all can make them sound short, but you can still get some good information. So I know that you did.
Who are you and what publication?
My name is Rene. I'm an independent black artist. I write for my own organization that I made within the day called Hip Hop Humanism, which is about community. And I have another platform called Prison Riot Radio, which is about supporting and helping our incarcerated brothers and sisters and formerly incarcerated.
With their artistry, whether it's rapping, poetry, or whatever.
Monologues, poetry, and everything, you know. Trying to change the narrative when it comes to that.
Alright, let's go.
Okay, so first I'm going to start with you, Rick. So I know that you did, some time these days and stuff. So my question to you is, what kept you motivated while you were incarcerated?
Well, I couldn't see my mom's son doing the rest of his life in prison. So I never thought that I should be in prison for the rest of my life. When I was committing my crime, like what Cavario said earlier, I was one of the ones that knew I should go to jail. Like, I'd already prepared to go to jail. Like, so when I was in jail, I couldn't cry because I was looking forward to it. This is part of the game. Like, if you play the dope games, you go to jail. So I was always prepared to go to jail. But at the end of the day, I didn't feel that I should be there for the rest of my life. Right. I didn't feel that the crime that I committed deserved a life sentence. I thought maybe 10 years, when I first got there, I was like, oh, I'll plead guilty to 10 today. But they was like, oh, no, you ain't looking at 10. You're looking at life without the possibility.
Whoever radio that is, can you turn it off?
All right, and my second question is, what message or inspiration do you have for those that are currently behind the G-Wall?
Hopefully they do what I did and turn their prison into a college campus.
Man, right there.
That's right.
And I came out, I read over 300 business books. I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I read the LA Times every day. I read the New York Times when I could get it. I read a couple business news. What I did is I got some lessons, from people. It's like you did, some old heads told me like, oh, you come to your lawyer and get you out of jail? And I was like, not a good lawyer. I paid that dude $180,000. And the other lawyer I was going to pay $500,000, he's using the same system. So he's really equivalent to one of the best attorneys. So why should I care about the law? And then the guy broke it down to me. He was like, yeah. He said, will she get time? And I was like, of course she get time. You got kids? I was like, yeah, you got kids. Of course they get time. And he said, do you got other clients? And I was like, yeah, you got other clients. He said, do they get time? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so you think that he cares as much about you getting out of prison as he do all of those other people who I just named you? And I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, you should care more about getting yourself out of jail than he cares about getting out of jail. And that's where I broke it down and I said, you know what? I'm going to spend the same energy getting myself out of jail that I did to get myself in jail. And I want to work.
And let me tell you something. Let me tell you this, though. This an interesting stat because 60% of the men that's incarcerated are illiterate.
That's a fact. Oh, no, I didn't.
60% of men that are incarcerated are illiterate. That's a fact.
Another percentage that can't comprehend. After the ones that can't read, they can't comprehend what they read. Like you ask them, what does that mean? What does that sentence?
And the fact.
Make it through a paragraph, but you can't.
You can't provide.
And another fact is that. Another fact is that Rick had got a scholarship to play tennis. Yep. But because he was illiterate, they wouldn't honor it. Now imagine if they just gave him the help that he need while he go off and be a star. We'd be looking at it that we might not even know him on this level. That's the impact.
Because he's still the same person.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That shit crazy, right? And it was an Ivy League, right? It was an Ivy League, right?
Oh, no, Long Beach State.
Long Beach State. Saigon, real quick. Come on.
Not
that quick.
All right, for sitting with me. I appreciate, the type of music that you made. That's one of the reasons why we started with Popcornism was to put independent artists that didn't want to, spread death and misery. So I'm thankful for that very much. So my first question is, what are your thoughts on the false narrative of the incarcerated and the formerly incarcerated?
When you say false narratives, like what?
By false narratives, you mean that you can't be anything. You're always going to be a bad part of society, drug addicts, abusers, and things like that.
Got you. Like I said earlier, it goes back to say, and I tell this to a lot of the young people who lose hope. Where we come from, it's easy to lose hope. Hope is like, you start to see your life going a certain way, and you figure like, I'm going to end up in jail or in prison. And you start to believe it or dead, and then so I tell these young guys, because I make it my business to interact with the youth, and I let them know it's not how you start, it's how you finish. There's an end game. Like I said, for me, for instance, I had no reason to believe I could be anything. I come from a broken home. My father wasn't in my life. My mother had no sense of direction. My mother told me before she passed away, she had 5 kids, and she said, Brian, I never even wanted kids. You had 5 of us. See it on the only child. She had 5 kids, and she was a kid herself, mentally. She was a kid, so she didn't know how to raise us. So we ended up having to, the streets raised us, aunts, family members, we bounced around. So you lose hope when you like that because you feel unloved, you feel unwanted, you feel, you walk outside your house and the police fucking with you, you go to school. And so I try to tell these younger generation, like, first of all, self-love is the most important love you can have, period. You gotta learn to love yourself. And as much as cliche as that shit sound, it's really real. You gotta love yourself. I know dudes who tell you they love a girl. I love this chick. I'm like, bro, you don't even love yourself.
That's a fact.
I don't love a girl.
You don't even brush your teeth every day, my
That's
brother.
a fact.
How you in love when you're not even keeping up with your hygiene?
Trying to be in my face.
But we a lot of times we ignore ourselves, and the most important part is to instill hope and let them know you're special. You could be anything you want to be. And when you tell these kids this, they look at you sometimes like you're speaking Japanese because they never heard it before. They never heard it. So me being a little bit of influence that I have, and I come around and they go, oh, hell, Saigon, they see you on TV or whatever, and so they think they always look at you like you feel like you're better than them automatically. So I come right down to their level and say, bro, I ain't no different than you, bro, because I had to pay to get. My family thought I was a millionaire when they said, you got money on TV. I said, we got to pay to get on TV? They don't understand the concept right now. I said, somebody paid for me to be on TV, and it wasn't even me. It was a record company who, so I try to keep it short. I try to teach the younger generation because certainly, an old timer told me in jail, a leopard can't change his spots. And I think that's about 95% true. I wouldn't say it's ultimately true because you could always learn. There's always room for growth if you're willing to learn. That's right. And once some people get to a point where they're so closed-minded, they're not willing to grow. They feel like there's no room for growth. There's always room for growth. So when you grab them up while they're young, you start instilling that in them young, and let them know like you could be anything you want to be in this world if you apply yourself and if you learn to love yourself. So.
My second question is, what advice or encouragement would you give someone who is formerly incarcerated but society is beating them down because of it?
Make it short, bro.
See it. Bullying me all day.
That's the only way you respond.
I would tell them that, again, it kind of like ties into what I've been saying all night, and it's believe in yourself. Don't let them define you. Because once you do that, then, they're not going to say, oh, you're great. And when we leave the penitentiary, the first thing they tell us is, you'll be back. Yeah. Right? Because the recidivism rate is in the high 80s, man, you know what I'm saying? So they looking like 90% of y'all will be back. And I haven't been in jail 20 years. I got out of jail in the year 2000. 2021. I told motherfuckers, I'm not coming back.
That's a fact.
I'm not going to be one of those people. And you have to, and it starts in here, it starts with self. It starts with self. That's why we have to instill in our children how important they are while they're young. You know, grab them while they're young and let them know, like, jail, you doing that mistake, one mistake doesn't define you. And you can everybody around this table, we all been through adversity, and look at us, we here now spreading our word.
Bully alert. Bully alert. Bully alert. Bully alert. Bully alert. Yes, yes.
Alrighty. So my question for you, Rizza, is this. When did you realize the power of your voice, and what drives you to use your platform the way that you do?
I never knew that I had a level of influence until I was tutoring my oldest student at the time. I was 13 years old, working at a nonprofit literacy program, 86-year-old woman. I had to teach her how to relearn how to read through a phonics program. Teaching her while also being in a room full of Bloods and Crips who hated each other, and then listening to this young 13-year-old. I want y'all to get this. Like, this
And you're the 13-year-old.
I'm the 13-year-old. It's the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody know anything about the West Coast?
It hit different.
You got Power in the room. You got Grape Street.
Yeah.
Okay. You got Front Street.
And you in Compton.
You have all these hoods who traditionally are at each other's neck. They kill each other. I mean, that's what it is. And they listen to this 13-year-old. It didn't register until later on when people outside of the building would say, you had them sitting in front of each other reading a book? And they looked at me like, no, bro, how much you paying, bro?
Right.
I said, how much you paying? Like, what you want? I said, no, they didn't know how to read. That was the main problem.
Yeah.
Most of the big homies didn't know how to read.
That's a fact.
And when they found somebody...
They knew how to count money, though.
Right, true. They know how to count money.
That's it.
Right. Numbers. There's consequences to that. That's fact. That's what you already know.
Yeah.
So it was when I was able to see the effect with people who I knew traditionally were killing each other, and they weren't doing it because it was something that they saw within this young brother that could help them collectively. At that point, 13 years old. And the second part of that question was, I'm tired of seeing our people die. I'm tired of seeing our
That's a
people
fact.
I'm tired of seeing a generation of, I'm going to make it very simple. I'm tired of seeing the youngest within the human reality dominate the majority of human reality.
Yeah.
I'm very sick of
that. Went over a lot.
That went over a lot for a reason. I said it like that.
It's too much.
I in no way can conceive, nor can I calculate, nor understand how a degenerate group of partial human beings, and I'm being very specific, could overcome the original people of the universe itself. I never could understand that. So I'm so disgusted at that to where I would never allow them to overtake us again. And I would never allow us to go back down to that position that they go back to. And it will happen not as long as me and all of our brothers and sisters are doing something about it, from B-more all the way to the West Coast.
One leg and all, shorty.
So it doesn't matter to me no more. That's what it is.
I'm coming. You going to earn now? You want to earn?
All right.
Aaron.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You know, being a teacher is a job that takes a certain type of heart, you know. So my question is, what made you decide to be a teacher?
Very good question. Like my brother Rick talked about earlier, I was somebody that, not for as long as he was, but I was functionally illiterate until I was in middle school. And at the point that I fell in love with literature, I went from being one of the worst students in every single school that I was to an honor roll student for the rest of my career in education. And at the point that I was at Penn State University, and I was in a stadium class of over 1,000 people, and I looked around and I saw not one other black face in the room. I started to think back to all of my homies that I went to school with back here in Baltimore. And I thought about all of the homies that were more talented than me, were by all accounts smarter than me, and that I looked up to personally my whole life, that never got a chance to even taste the opportunity that I then was benefiting from. And I said, damn, man, like, and I thought back, I said, at what moment did I become this student? And it wasn't even a point in a specific class. It was a teacher. It was one teacher that I had that decided that rather than put me down like every single other teacher in my career had done, they said, let me sow into this kid. Let me actually pour time, attention, and love into him and see what grows from him. And I thought, I've never had a teacher like that again. And I never had a teacher like that prior to that moment. And I thought, how many kids in Baltimore, because in case y'all haven't recognized, all of us are geniuses. All of us are engineers. All of us, we were born in the trenches with nothing and found a way to do more with less.
That's a fact.
We didn't have basketball courts, so we grabbed the milk crate, we went out back and we made one.
That's a fact.
And so we built them out of scraps that we just found laying around, and people would look at us and completely ignore the genius in that. How many engineers, how many doctors, how many lawyers were sitting right in class with me because nobody saw the value and the worth in them enough to invest of their time, energy, and attention. They were where they were, and I was where I was. So to make a long story short, when I went back into the school, I decided that I had been complaining about a lot of the deficiencies in the school for a long time. But I'm one of the people where I get tired of listening to people complain about things and not be ready to actually roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty trying to come up with solutions. So I said, I can't be wasting my time talking without actually going into these schools and finding a way to do that. So that's what started me off on the path there.
This is a really good follow-up question. What do you enjoy most about teaching our youth?
Real quick, bro.
To be very short and brief, the greatest part of any educator's day, or it should be at least, I'll say it should be, is that moment where you're able to see the light bulb go off in the mind of your kid.
That's it.
And I say my kids because they are my kids. Like their parents call me just as much as some of their mothers call me just as much as they call their fathers and other figures in their life. Yeah. But that moment when you actually see a kid get it and really understand it, that moment that critical thinking element kind of switches on, and now for the rest of their life you know that this piece of information or this way of doing things is going to be a part of their day-to-day experience. That for me, no matter what teacher gets paid, no matter what deficiencies teachers have to fight through, that makes it work.
And before you go to Cavario, we have a question for Rick. Rick, the question is from the Maps Media. Should there be a more defined difference between knowledge and education about drugs and glorification?
Say it again.
Give Rick the mic. It says, should there be a more defined difference between knowledge and education about drugs and glorification?
Well, I don't know, they all pretty related. But like Cavario was saying earlier, we teach our kids how to become critical thinkers. They can look at it from the beginning and figure out what's going to happen in the end. Then we don't have to worry about them. They'll be good. So
all right.
I think it all comes back down to, like you said, critical thinking.
Short and sweet. I love it. I love it. Cavario, I just need 1 minute, 1 second. All right. I don't want no problems out of none of y'all.
Nice to meet you. My question to you, my first question to you is, how do you feel about the dehumanization of farmers?
The dehumanization?
How do I feel about the dehumanization of
Okay.
largely our people and the criticism? It is what fuels my fire.
Oh, that's
Really.
that's a sign.
I see what it is. I had a chance to get up close and personal with it. Yeah. I would do what I do for nothing. Absolutely. That's our purpose.
Yeah.
And the second one is, do you think that the 13th Amendment is part of the blame for the dehumanization? Because how is Scripture right for it?
Absolutely. I mean, the 13th Amendment is based in the chattel slavery system, so it was the best business they ever had. Without that business, there is no this place and this condition, right? So, yeah, it is absolutely the basis for it. It's about figuring out a legal way to reduce us back to that state, because that state is the best condition for their socioeconomic plan and agenda. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me get the mic.
Oh, short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Cavario never